starts in silence. No fights, no long speeches, no dramatic ending, just a quiet stop. Two people who once orbited each other simply don't anymore. The messages fade, the calls end, and what seems like the end of the story becomes the beginning of a deeper psychological shift that neither person fully sees coming. This is the moment when the emotional landscape begins to rearrange itself, silently but powerfully. For someone with a dismissive, avoidant mindset, silence has always been a shield. Pulling back means safety, control, and power. They believe that by retreating, they can dictate the rhythm of connection. For you, however, chasing became second nature. Filling the gaps, holding the bridge, keeping the connection alive even when it wasn't being reciprocated. But now, both of you have stopped. No calls, no texts, just silence, strategic or unintentional, setting the stage for something much deeper. From the outside, it looks like nothing's happening. Two people drifting apart, but beneath that calm surface, something real begins to stir. The ego that once relied on being chased starts to tremble. The part of you that couldn't stand silence begins to breathe in it. What looks like stillness is actually movement, not through words or gestures, but through the subtle shift of psychological gravity. This is where the power dynamics quietly flip. Most people never talk about this phase. They focus on the emotional exits, the tears, the arguments, the closure moments. But real change happens in the space where nothing seems to happen. In the unanswered notifications, the nights spent resisting the urge to text, the growing curiosity that creeps into their mind when your usual patterns don't return. The silent treatment effect works both ways, but usually only one side understands its true impact. For someone with an avoidant attachment style, no contact feels like safety. They expect to feel in control while you spiral in uncertainty. They expect you to break the silence first, but when you don't, their certainty begins to crack. Quiet questions begin to form. Why haven't they reached out? Did they move on? Did I misread the dynamic? They won't say it out loud, but the power of absence starts working against them. The wall they built for protection begins to turn into a mirror. For you, the silence stops being punishment. It becomes initiation. At first, it shakes every reflex you've built. The urge to send just one message, to check their profile, to search for a sign that they still care. It's strong. But with every day you resist that impulse, the emotional control starts to shift back into your hands. Stoicism here isn't about pretending you don't feel anything. It's about choosing not to let emotion dictate your next move. Strategic silence becomes your ally, not your enemy. This isn't about playing games. It's about understanding the hidden psychological mechanics that unfold when both people stop reaching out. The world sees nothing, just silence, but beneath the surface, something powerful takes form. Egos crack, control flips, emotional habits are exposed. Both sides are forced to face the truths that words usually cover up. If this message resonates with you and you want to support content that explores these deeper layers of human psychology, consider clicking the super thanks button below. It's not about charity. It's about helping build a space where we talk about the silent, strategic side of emotional dynamics that no one else explains quite like this. Because what happens in silence changes everything. This is where obsession replaces control, where detachment is born, where the invisible game quietly flips. When two people stop contacting each other, it doesn't explode, it fades. One day the phone lights up a little less, then not at all. What's left is a quiet that doesn't shout, it lingers. It feels empty, but it's full of meaning. Two people, each carrying their own wounds, stop the familiar dance of pursuit and retreat. The stage goes dark, and what was once hidden starts to surface. For the dismissive avoidant, this silence feels like control. They've always believed that distance protects them, that no contact means safety, no emotional pressure, no rejection. They tell themselves they're relieved. But that relief is fragile, temporary. For you, the silence feels like a void. Your mind, trained to chase, twitches for movement. You've built muscle memory around reaching out. And now that muscle finds nothing to hold. The early days of silence are deceptive. On the outside, nothing seems to change. But deep beneath, psychological forces begin to shift. The avoidant feels powerful at first. They've always relied on your predictability, your messages, your check-ins, your warmth. But when that disappears, a crack forms in their armor. Why aren't they texting? The question starts quietly, but silence has a way of echoing. Distance begins to feel unfamiliar. Their control depended on your pursuit. And when you stop chasing, the balance tilts. For you, the silence hits differently. At first, it's uncomfortable. You check your phone, replay old moments, fight the impulse to reach out. But in that discomfort, something new begins. Awareness. You start noticing how much energy you spent holding the connection together alone. You see the cycle. One person withdraws, the other compensates. And for the first time, you're not compensating. You're letting the space exist. That quiet decision marks the beginning of emotional sovereignty. Silence isn't passive. It's not doing nothing. It's an invisible force that reveals the truth. For the dismissive avoidant, the absence they once used as armor becomes a mirror reflecting their own fear of intimacy. Their ego, once sustained by being chased, starts to falter. For you, what once felt like loss turns into detachment, not coldness, but calm power. This is the part no one sees. Two people, both silent, both believing they're in control. One hides behind distance, thinking they've won. The other learns that silence, when chosen from self-respect, isn't weakness. It's leverage. Stoicism isn't about shutting off emotion. It's about letting silence do what words never could. Reveal truth and shift power. In that quiet, everything changes. The avoidance relief turns to curiosity, then to discomfort. Your anxiety turns to clarity. No one makes a move, but the ground beneath both starts to shift. This, not the argument, not the goodbye, is where the real story begins. Because silence may look empty, but it's where everything left unsaid finally starts to speak. It begins with you, someone who's been conditioned by the dynamic to fill every gap they create. When they pulled away, you moved closer. When they went cold, you warmed things up. It became a rhythm, exhausting, yet familiar. But now, that rhythm has vanished. And in its absence, everything begins to shift beneath the surface. For the avoidant, silence arrives as relief. At first, it feels like victory, like they've regained control over the emotional landscape. No contact feels like safety. They convince themselves they don't need connection, mistaking withdrawal for strength. But that strength isn't real. It's a shield protecting them from emotions they've never learned to face. As days pass, the initial calm fades into something quieter, something unnamed. Their certainty flickers. They've always counted on you to hold the bridge, to make sure the story didn't end. When that bridge disappears, their control doesn't feel as steady anymore. For you, the silence becomes a psychological X-ray. It exposes what you couldn't see while you were busy chasing. You begin to notice how much of the relationship depended on your emotional labor, your constant reassurance, your quick replies, your effort to hold space when they couldn't. It's uncomfortable to see, but also clarifying. You realize the no contact rule isn't just about them. It's about finally seeing yourself without all the noise. In that stillness, truth surfaces. They weren't the only one controlling the rhythm. You were too, just from the opposite end. This is where the power dynamics start to shift, invisibly at first. The avoidant, who thrives on predictability, senses that something's different. They may not admit it, but a quiet tension begins to build. It's not about missing you yet, it's about the collapse of a familiar structure. Meanwhile, your nervous system, once conditioned to react instantly, starts to slow down. The initial panic fades. You start to see that silence isn't your enemy. It's information. It shows you who moves when the music stops. Avoidants often hide behind logic. They tell themselves stories like, if I'm not texting, it means I don't care, or I knew it wouldn't last. But these are just protective narratives, masking deeper fears, fear of abandonment, of being truly seen, of needing someone who might not stay. When you stop reaching out, that fear has nowhere to hide. It doesn't explode. It seeps in slowly, through quiet nights, through unspoken questions. For you, silence reveals your own emotional habits. You realize how often you reached out not from desire but from fear. Fear of losing control, fear of being forgotten. You begin to see how much of your worth was tied to their responses. And this realization doesn't break you, it steadies you. Stoicism isn't about pretending you don't care. It's about seeing clearly, without illusion, and choosing your response instead of reacting blindly. Two emotional realities that were once tangled together now stand apart. The avoidant hides behind their fortress, unaware that the foundation beneath them is cracking. You stand in the silence, uncomfortable but awake. This is the hidden battlefield of psychological warfare. Not loud confrontations, but quiet spaces where truth has nowhere to hide. And as both sides face this invisible shift, one question emerges. Who adapts and who clings to the old pattern? Then comes the moment when silence stops feeling accidental and starts feeling deliberate. It's no longer about waiting for their next move. It's about you making one. A quiet, calculated decision to stop chasing what keeps slipping away. At first, it doesn't feel powerful. It feels like standing at the edge of a cliff without a rope. Every instinct screams to reach out, to send a message, to feel something familiar. But you don't, you pause. And in that pause, something profound begins to change. This is the moment most people break the no contact rule. Not because they don't know better, but because they underestimate how strong old patterns are. Reaching out has always been your way to soothe anxiety, to fill the gap, to keep the story alive. But now you see it clearly. It was a loop. Every time they pulled away, you filled the space. Every time they withdrew, you made it safe for them to return. And each time the cycle repeated. So this time, you don't. Strategic silence stops being something that happens to you and becomes something you choose. The avoidant doesn't expect that. They're used to you breaking first. In their mind, emotional distance is their weapon, and your pursuit is their validation. When that pursuit doesn't come, their script begins to crumble. At first, they tell themselves you'll reach out eventually. Then they pretend they don't care. But as days turn to weeks, that certainty, the one holding their ego together, begins to fracture. For them, this isn't just silence anymore. It's unfamiliar territory. The control they once had doesn't work the same way. For you, holding the line feels both terrifying and liberating. The urge to reach out still comes. In quiet nights, in sudden memories, when loneliness whispers bargains. But every time you resist, you reclaim another piece of yourself that was tied to their unpredictability. Emotional control isn't about shutting down feelings. It's about refusing to be ruled by them. That's the essence of Stoicism. You don't run from your impulses. You sit with them. You let them rise and fall like waves, and you remain still. This silent discipline reveals something deeper. How much of your worth you had measured through their attention. Every text you once sent was an unspoken question. Do I still matter to you? Now, without sending anything, you're forced to answer that question yourself. And the longer you sit in that stillness, the clearer the answer becomes. You begin to separate their silence from your value. You stop waiting for their response to define your emotional state. That's where true detachment begins. Not in cold indifference, but in calm self-mastery. Meanwhile, on their side, the silence starts to feel different. What once felt comforting now feels heavy. Their usual relief turns to restlessness. They're used to retreating and being found, but this time they retreat and find nothing waiting. Curiosity becomes discomfort. Discomfort turns into loss. It's subtle at first, quiet thoughts they won't admit to anyone. Your decision isn't loud. There's no announcement, no final message, just a quiet psychological turning point. You stop reacting like silence is a test to pass. You let it breathe. You let your absence speak. And though it looks like nothing from the outside, it's everything beneath the surface. The emotional dynamic has flipped. You're no longer dancing to their rhythm. You're moving to your own. Once that decision is made, silence stops being a reaction and becomes a way of living. Days turn to weeks. What was once paralysis turns into progress. The hours once spent checking, overthinking, waiting, you begin to reclaim them. The silence becomes structure. Not a wall to hide behind, but ground to rebuild on. At first, it's awkward. Your thoughts still drift back. You still pause at memories. But every time you resist acting on impulse, you strengthen. Strategic silence stops being about no contact. It becomes the redirection of your energy. You pour it into your routines, your mind, your body, your goals. You anchor your emotional state in what you can control, not in someone else's unpredictability. Meanwhile, the avoidant starts to feel the silence cut deeper. The distance that once comforted them now stings. They might check your stories, like an old post, or drop subtle hints, quiet tests to see if you'll respond. But you don't. You don't decode, don't chase, don't react. That's where Stoicism shows its true strength. You're not trying to control their behavior. You're mastering your own. And as the weeks pass, your silence speaks louder than any message could. You're no longer the one filling the gaps, explaining, or reaching. You're simply living. And because of that, the balance shifts, quietly but completely. The avoidance comfort in distance begins to crumble. The emotional bridge they relied on no longer exists. Their strategies, the cold withdrawal, the calculated response, lose their power when you stop reacting. For you, this stage isn't about pretending not to care. It's about living freely, without circling back to the same emotional loop. The silence no longer feels heavy. It feels like peace. It begins quietly, not with chaos, not with confrontation, but with clarity. The space that once felt heavy with waiting now begins to feel clean. You start to notice small but powerful shifts. Clearer thoughts, steadier emotions, deeper sleep, and easier breaths. It doesn't happen overnight. It unfolds slowly, almost invisibly. But the change is real. On the other side, their inner world begins to tremble too. The silence they thought would protect them starts turning into something else. Something they can no longer control. What was once their shield slowly begins to resemble a cage. Their strategic silence, designed to create safety and maintain control, begins to backfire. The distance they created starts to work against them. And as this realization grows, the dynamic shifts again. Not through confrontation, but because you stayed still long enough for silence to do its invisible work. This is where the real transformation begins. Silence starts to pull hidden emotional strings on both sides. The initial quiet has faded. Routines are changing, but beneath the surface, subtle psychological movements begin to unfold. For the dismissive avoidant, control has always depended on predictability. They retreat, you chase, and the cycle continues. But now the script is broken. You're no longer moving according to their rhythm, and that unsettles them. So they begin to test, not directly, not with open vulnerability, but with small, calculated gestures. A random story view, a like on an old post, maybe a meme dropped out of nowhere. Seemingly harmless actions, yet each one is designed to measure your emotional temperature without revealing theirs. Each breadcrumb carries purpose. They want to know, are you still paying attention? If you respond too fast, it confirms their sense of power. If you don't, uncertainty begins to creep in. And for someone who thrives on emotional distance, uncertainty is the one thing that shakes their armor. For you, these tiny signals can feel like emotional traps. A single notification can send your mind spiraling into analysis. Do they miss me? Are they reaching out? That urge to react is your old reflex whispering again. But this is where strategic silence reveals its real strength. Not reacting doesn't mean pretending not to care. It means recognizing manipulation disguised as connection. Every time you resist, you reclaim a piece of emotional control. You stop being reactive and start being observant. Your silence becomes intentional. Not a wall, but a mirror that reflects truth. Stoicism begins to move from theory to practice. Emotional control now lives in the split second between impulse and action. You breathe, you wait, and you don't let the moment dictate your next move. Meanwhile, their testing may intensify. When subtle hints fail, they might escalate. A comment, a message, a casual, "Hey." Still not vulnerability, but another quiet attempt to regain footing. The avoidant doesn't rush forward. They inch closer, gauging your reactions. And when those reactions don't come as expected, something inside them begins to shake. Their sense of control, once rooted in your predictability, starts to erode. For the first time, they feel what they've avoided for years: doubt, insecurity, and fear of being forgotten. You, however, are no longer caught in that loop. Each silent test becomes proof of your growth. You're not chasing breadcrumbs, you're watching the pattern unravel. The old habits still whisper late at night, but your silence speaks louder now. It tells them their tactics no longer hold power. The balance has shifted. What was once reaction has turned into observation. What was once discomfort is now discipline. This is the most delicate and powerful phase, the tug of war without movement. No arguments, no messages, no grand closure. Just two psyches quietly negotiating new terms. One tries to reassert control. The other stays still, unshaken. And that stillness, not anger, not indifference, begins to transform everything. Silence stops being a tactic and becomes a state of strength. The early discomfort fades, replaced by a calm steadiness. The urge to reach out still appears from time to time, but it no longer rules you. You start seeing how much energy you used to spend holding something together that wasn't reciprocal. The focus shifts inward. You begin to notice your own progress, your growth, your clarity, your sense of grounding. Stoicism becomes tangible. It's not about shutting down emotion, but about mastering it. On their side, the silence begins to sound different. What once felt like control now echoes as loss. The distance they used as protection turns into a void they can't manage. Their ego, built on your predictable attention, begins to wobble. They may not say it aloud, but they feel the change. The quiet that once comforted them now makes them restless. Meanwhile, for you, that same quiet starts to feel like freedom. You're no longer defined by their presence or absence. You're not waiting for validation or closure. You're finding stability in yourself. The silence that once felt like punishment now feels earned, a sign that you've stopped handing over your emotional power. You're not numbing yourself, you're grounding yourself. This phase isn't loud or dramatic. It's subtle, invisible even. But inside, everything is transforming. You build new habits, new thoughts, new peace. The story that once revolved around them is being rewritten, one quiet day at a time. And while they struggle to understand why their silence no longer works, you've already moved into a new space. One defined not by waiting, but by becoming. This is where the silence stops being a void and becomes a foundation. You've stepped out of the emotional storm and now you stand in still air, grounded, self-contained, free. The game didn't just flip. You outgrew it. Time has passed. The silence is no longer unfamiliar. It's become the quiet air that fills the space between you. What began as hesitation has evolved into something deeper, a full psychological recalibration. And now, slowly but unmistakably, the consequences begin to surface. On their side, the dismissive avoidant begins to feel the weight of what they once thought they controlled. Silence used to be their weapon, distance their shield. They believed that by pulling back, they could stay safe while still keeping you close, always on their terms. But as days turn into weeks, and weeks into months, the illusion starts to crack. At first, it's subtle. A restlessness creeps in during moments that used to be filled with your attention. They find themselves unlocking their phone without knowing why. Their thumb hesitates over your profile, hovering between curiosity and denial. They scroll through old messages, convincing themselves it's nothing, just passing time. But deep down, confusion brews. The dynamic that once ran so predictably no longer obeys their rules. The silence that used to give them power has flipped the script. Now it's haunting them. The one who used silence to control the rhythm of connection finds themselves controlled by it instead. As time stretches further, that quiet confusion turns heavier. The ego that once stood tall begins to tremble. The certainty they once had, that no matter how far they withdrew, you'd always come back, begins to fade. The bridge they relied on has crumbled, and they're standing alone on their side of the divide, realizing it doesn't feel as safe as they imagined. Avoidant attachment feeds on predictability. When the pattern breaks, their mind spins. They try to rationalize your silence. They've probably moved on. It never really mattered anyway. But those are just fragile defenses. In the stillness, those stories don't hold up for long. Meanwhile, you've changed. What once felt like emotional collapse has transformed into clarity. A calm, grounded detachment born from strength, not numbness. You're not waiting anymore. You're living. You've rebuilt your rhythm, reclaimed your energy, and reconnected with your own time. You're no longer the one chasing. You've stepped out of the cycle entirely. And even though your transformation is silent, its message is loud. You no longer operate in their shadow. When avoidance senses that shift, something profound happens. Their emotional distance starts to feel less like control and more like exile. The very silence they once used to protect themselves now isolates them. They begin to experience the emotions they've spent years suppressing. Loneliness, regret, vulnerability. Some try to outrun it, diving into distractions, new relationships, overwork, endless scrolling. But no distraction can drown out what silence has already revealed. Late at night, when the world quiets down, their mind drifts back, not to the chase, but to your presence. The absence they created has become undeniable. Some might test the waters with small gestures, a like, a comment, a casual, hey. Others make direct contact, pretending months of distance never existed. But when they return, it doesn't hit you the same way. Their charm feels rehearsed, their silence predictable. You can see the emotional pattern for what it is, and that clarity takes away its power. Not every avoidant reaches out. Some retreat further, convincing themselves they're better off. But silence doesn't let them escape completely. It lingers. In quiet rooms, in conversations where your name surfaces, in unguarded moments when they feel that familiar ache. Silence is patient. It doesn't chase. It simply waits until the ego runs out of excuses. For you, this stage isn't about winning. It's about seeing. You see the pattern for what it always was. the push and pull, the emotional games, the fear behind their control, and your old reflex to bridge every gap. You finally understand that closure was never theirs to give. It arrived the moment you stopped outsourcing your emotional piece to their behavior. That's the final flip. When their silence no longer defines you, and your silence becomes the mirror that reshapes the entire dynamic. This doesn't always end in a grand reunion. Sometimes they return, disoriented by the void they created. Sometimes they disappear for good. But the real transformation doesn't happen in their return. It happens inside you. You've stepped out of the loop, seen the truth behind both sides of silence. For them, it's a confrontation with their own emotional walls. For you, it's an awakening, the rediscovery of your worth. Whether they resurface or vanish, it no longer controls you. The silence that once felt unbearable has become your foundation. Their absence isn't a storm anymore. It's just weather passing while you remain steady. That's the quiet power of this stage. The silence you both created no longer belongs to them. It belongs to you. In the end, everything circles back to silence, the same silence that once terrified you. What started as a pause between two people turned into a quiet battlefield where power shifted, illusions cracked, and identities rebuilt themselves. The avoidant, who once relied on your pursuit, now faces the weight of their own distance. And you've learned to stand still without collapsing. You've turned quiet into clarity. This story was never about who texted first or who won. It's about what happens when you stop moving to someone else's rhythm, when you stop holding together a bridge only you were walking on, when you stop chasing validation in someone's response and start finding it in your own stillness. That's where transformation lives. Not in the noise, but in the calm. For the avoidant, this silence exposes everything their strategies once concealed. Their control was always conditional, built on the assumption that you'd never stop reaching out. When you did, the game flipped. Their safety net turned into a mirror, forcing them to face the very fears they tried to escape. Fear of being forgotten, fear of needing, fear of loss without effort. For you, this is a quiet awakening. The silence that once triggered your anxiety has become your anchor. You've shifted from impulse to intention, from reaction to reflection. That's not coldness, that's self-mastery. It's Stoicism in action, not in theory. Not every story ends with reconnection, but that's no longer the goal. The real victory is internal. You stopped letting their silence define you. You became the calm in the storm, and that's something they can feel, whether they admit it or not. That's why silence is powerful. It doesn't argue, it doesn't beg, it doesn't chase. It reveals. It flips dynamics without words. It exposes fears, attachments, and hidden needs. And for those strong enough to stand in it, silence becomes the moment where everything shifts. Not between you and them, but within you. If you felt this shift, if this story reflects something real in your life, don't let it end here. Subscribe to the channel, share this message, and help someone else find clarity in their own silence. These moments are universal, but rarely spoken about. And if this message resonated deeply, consider supporting this space using the Super Thanks feature below. Not as charity, but as a way to keep this kind of raw, human truth alive. Because the moment you stopped explaining, stopped chasing, and let silence speak, the game didn't just flip. You did.